So Chum means to seek the bridge, and there's two main bridges. We have the external bridge, so the bridge between oneself and the opponent, and we also have the internal bridge, the bridge from your center of mass to the extremities. Now you already work on the second bridge, the internal bridge, in your Sulim Tao and your state training, because you center yourself, you sense, which as you sense outward, you're using the sensing and moving quality of energy, and then you also see the energy moving outwards as well. So you're building that internal bridge, right? But in Chum you start to build the external as well. So you're building them together, so you're stepping and pivoting. So that's kind of what Chum means, to seek the bridge. Now, let's just start as usual with some pivoting. So the thing here is that, and the trick here is that you want to be aware of the relationship of your legs to your center of mass, meaning as I turn my center of mass, I want to be aware that my legs stay in the same condition. Not the exact position, of course, because they move, but meaning they still have that soft springiness. Now, what you may notice is that, so for example, I'll demonstrate kind of wrong. So, if for example, as I turn my center, my legs aren't staying in the Sulim Tao position, they start to kind of twist and straighten. See how I'm like straightening my legs and they're not working with my stance. So I'm exaggerating so you can see what I mean. Whereas if I keep my stance on and I turn, you see how they operate in the same fashion. They stay softly bent, they stay pointed, and they move with the power plane. So you can use your legs as an indicator of how well you're pivoting. Do your legs still feel active and pointed? Now, yes, ultimately you would like a smooth surface to pivot on. Like you'd like some socks and a smooth surface as opposed to shoes on grass, ultimately. But if you don't have the benefit of, you know, a nice smooth surface and Kung Fu slippers, maybe you've got hard shoes on, then you may need to actually pivot and keep the feet there. Meaning, let's say I had, for example, let's say I've got, Noah left his Crocs here. Let's say I've got Noah's Crocs on. Like, yeah? I can't slip now, it's too grippy. So I'd have to pivot just enough and maintain the stance, because I can't actually turn my feet now. So I'd have to turn and then lift my feet in order to turn my body. So you may have to adjust according to your footwear, is what I'm trying to say. Gross, Noah's shoes. Yeah.
So is there anything to be mindful of, just aware of when you have to do that, like to shift your feet, like it still should be from the centre, but is there, you know, any awareness between that transition piece, right? Because I think it's very clear you've got to keep your knees pointed, and then you can pivot to a certain point because there's friction there. If you have a smooth surface, your feet and your knees and everything pivot, but on that point, if we're practicing that, because that's what we've got on the floor, and that becomes our training surface, how do we not engrave bad habits?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, just keep it simple. Let the body move as it needs to. So for example, you know, if you take it to the point of stepping, you have to lift the foot, right? So my suggestion is just turn as best as possible. Once the body has to raise the foot, let it. Meaning you'll get to a point where the knee's like, okay, I'm gonna break or bust or be injured if I keep turning this way, and then you're gonna have to. So the body will tell you already as to what, when you should rise the foot off the floor and turn. And it wouldn't be a bad habit anyway, because it's similar to the concept of the ball rolling down a hill. The ball moves according to the environment. So you can think of it in that same context. The hill, the end of the hill is changing now, Jace. So as we turn, right, the end of the hill is moving with the power plane, and the ball wants to roll that way. So you can think of the feet in the same regard as you meet someone's force in Chi Sao. You roll according to the nature of the environment. Good question, sir. Alrighty, so Earth, Tau, Crown, rotating from the center of the center of mass. Now, if you haven't got yourself a ball yet, a marble, and no, not those type of balls, you naughty boys. Yeah, so Get yourself some type of ball, and then I find this such a great training tool, you know, and you turn it like this, yeah. Use it to rotate yourself.
But not that kind of balls you silly boys.
Yeah. So having one of these to turn it's a useful tool, it's a training tool, so that you kind of have the concept. Okay, I'm trying to move from a small ball in my center, the center of the center. Now, sense from the earth to the crown. Guys have been training for a while, you can be syncing and have the power plane on, but if you're still new to this, just try to focus on the center of the center, that tiny ball, and just rotating that ball. Good. Now, let's bring that together with the movement. So, start off with our chain punch, so you can start with your guard up, and then as you turn the center of mass, your first objective is to just coordinate the start and stop of the movement. So, as my hand starts, so if I pivot to my your right or my left, so it looks like right for you, you punch to the right. So your left hand would punch to the right side and your right hand would punch to the left side. Now, firstly, your placement should just be enough. So problem most people have when they do this is they pivot too far. We're not trying to do that. We're using a subtle pivot, just a subtle one. So first thing is your placement. Make sure you're placing just out. So if you're looking in the mirror or you're looking in the reflection of yourself, your punch is coming just to the side of your head, so you see your head outside the fist. So placement is the first thing. The second thing is coordination, meaning as your punch starts to move, your center moves simultaneously, and as your punch stops, your center stops simultaneously, so that you're starting and stopping the movement at the same time, meaning the rotation of the center and the rotation of the shoulder joint and movement of the elbow joint all start and stop simultaneously. So you're training your body's joint system to maximize power. So you make it simple, your center and your arm start and stop at the same time. So that's kind of what you're looking to be observant of in yourself. So this would be wrong. Pivot, punch, or punch, pivot, because they're obviously working at different times. But this would be correct, where I'm pivoting and punching simultaneously. One last way to think about that is that your center of mass is like the engine. As the center of mass turns, the strike expands out. Once the center of mass stops turning, the strike stops. The engine's been turned off. If you want to play around with it a bit, you can, use the ball and turn it. So that as this stops turning, the punch stops. And you see I'm doing this. So what you realize is that you're actually just doing the chain punch. So you're doing this, you're just doing your standard chain punch, but you're adding a pivot to it. Because you'll see the punch is still on the center. It's just the pivot that changes where it lands. Cool. All right, now let's play around with adding another vector of force to that. So as you pivot now, you're going to step as well. So you're using a step and pivot. So as I turn let's just do the movement first. You step and you pivot. So as you turn the center, you're bringing the center forward as well. So you've got a linear and a circular movement at the same time. So my center of mass is going forward as it turns. Forward as it turns. Forward as it turns. So
what's your footwork like on that one, Steady Blue?
Jason has a foot fetish. so we're pivoting and we're stepping. So you're
It's still linear forward, but you're pivoting with more of your torso.
yeah. So as I turn my center, so the line, the thing is, because you're pivoting as you turn, you could keep it on the same power plane, right? But your power plane focus is changing because I'm thinking, my target's here, so I'm turning and stepping. Yeah. So
If you're wanting to punch someone really hard, punch holes through walls, right? Would you be best to train that with your power plane straight and you're pivoting to create another vector of force?
So, yeah, good question. So your power plane's always going to be placed through their center, like just beyond their center is a good idea, because then you won't be off if they step away, generally speaking. So it's stuck there. And if you want to generate more power, okay, this is going to generate a certain amount. This is going to generate more. This is going to generate more because you're adding, mass and momentum. So, and then you can even spiral it, where you spiral everything, so you can add more. So the more vectors of force, the more power, technically speaking. But the question becomes is, can you maintain state and structural unification during those more complex movements? Meaning, Sil Tao, we're learning to unify our structure, master the state, maximize mass and momentum from a stationary standpoint, right? And then Chum Q, we're turning that and stepping that. Ji, we're spiraling and breaking that standard structure. Mukjong, we're circle stepping and making sure we place it into them. Weapons, we're putting it into objects outside of us. So, the Wing Chun system trains you to maximize power first internally, mentally, spiritually, and then adding it into more dynamic physical movements. But the key is you've got to have it here. If you don't have it here and here, it's difficult to add it into all this stuff because the body's moving so much more dynamically. That's why it's built in such a beautiful, perfect way. Long answer. But you get the gist. Does that make sense, Jace?
Yeah, it does. I kind of forgot my question, but yeah.
Alrighty, cool. So now from your circle step, your pivot step, which is different to the circle step. Yeah, you can think of it like, okay, my center is moving in a linear way towards here. Yeah, as I pivot, but your punch will be turning off to the side, so you pivot step, yeah? So you're now using a forward movement and a turn. From your guard, forward, turn. You can think of it, another way to simplify it is for the newer guys, because you can just think of the foot on the outside, so the foot from the other side of where you're punching is coming forward. So you can think of, okay, my foot and my arm on the outside from where I'm punching towards is coming forward. That's an external way to think about it, right? But really, your intention is to move from the center of mass. Yes, because if you get too lost in footwork, you're going to separate, you're not going to unify the whole mass and maximize power. You're lost in where your feet should be going. But that's just a guideline. The punch and the foot from the outside to the where you're punching can come together. But the important part is that you move your center of mass, so that everything's coming at once. So turning the center as you step. So linear and circular. So it's kind of like your pivot punch. So meaning if you looked at yourself in the mirror or in the Zoom screen as you do it, you'll see that you still end up with a similar position than when you're just doing it stationary. You still end up with that fist just outside the face line. But now you're adding the stepping power with the pivot power. So the rotational power and the stepping power are now added to the punching power. And you know, you're better off thinking of this as a coordination exercise. So you're turning, stepping and turning the center as you punch. So you're getting it all operating together. So you're better off thinking it in that way, because that coordination is going to maximize your power generation, as opposed to just trying to do it fast and tensing up, where you separate the body structure and you throw your mass in every direction. Minimize tension, so don't feel that joltingness at the end of your movements. Tension in your system is going to separate your structure. Try to think of less of a pivot, so you end up with the punch being, see how the punch is just outside my head? So you're getting used to coordinating it in a small degree as opposed to trying to coordinate it in a large degree here. Good. All right, team. We can hold it there. Do we have any questions or observations with our pivoting practice from Chum Q, pivot and step, sorry?
Is there a sliding when you step up, or you put your foot up and then ground down?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, there's a little bit of an up, but mostly a slide. So the reason we train at sliding is so that you can maintain a good solid connection to the floor, and that's kind of the ideal situation, that your feet are connected and flat with the ground, right? But you know, it's practicing for ideal circumstances. If you have to step, you step, you know, depending on your footwear and the environment. So yeah, ideally, just like in the Chum Q form sequence, ideally the feet stay connected and balanced to the floor. So when you move, they're just like kind of like they're sliding. There is a subtle lift and a weight shift, but generally speaking, you can think of it like your shoes keep a nice slidiness on the floor. We'll be I've currently got someone sourcing some of these to get some good quality ones, you know, because I mean, yeah, they make training a lot easier when you've got some of these.
Okay, and when you slide with the foot that's coming forward, do you put some pressure on the back foot, at least more than 50%?
Sure. So the way you want to think about your weight distribution is you want to think, okay, I move from my center and let the weight distribution change so that I feel balanced. So think, move from my center and feel a sense of balance. So generally speaking, you're always coming back to an equilibrium of about 50-50. So your intention isn't, when I'm here I have 80-20, when I'm here I have 60-90 or whatever, terrible maths. It's, I move from my center and I'm aiming for equilibrium, meaning I'm aiming to have a sense of A, balance, and B, even distribution. Move from the center, balance, even distribution. So what I'm saying is, if you move this forward, don't think, oh, I've got to make sure I have 50 there, or just think, do I feel balanced? And do I feel a sense of evenness of pressure across the whole of my feet? That's a better thing to think about than how much weight is on each foot.
Yeah, I understand that. But for that fraction of a second, when you do the actual sliding, is there more than 50% of your gravity on your back foot? Just what it feels like.
Gotcha. You mean when I'm coming forward with the pivot step, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
It's about even. It's maybe it goes up and down a little bit, but it stays around 50-50. Because think about it, if you were you think, was it going to the back leg or the front leg, the majority of your weight?
Let me see. I'd say for a fraction of a second, I put around 60+% on my back foot, like
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Rounding my back foot to have this pivot on my front foot, but that's a lack of technique from generating move from the center.
Yeah, so if you're finding you're too heavy on that foot, yeah, then you're probably not moving from the center. If you're finding you're too heavy and kind of stuck, because you'll feel, ultimately the feeling should feel like you're kind of floating. Shouldn't feel like you're stuck or pressing into the floor. Should feel like you're floating. Kind of like the way you naturally walk in daily life. You know, you don't feel like, oh, I'm stuck to the ground.
Yeah.
Cool. Very good, very nice. Any other questions or discussion points, team?
It should be a floating dance.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. A floating, yeah, thinking of it like it's a dance is actually a very good kind of mindset to have, so that you don't tighten up or force things. You give it more like a flow, yeah? More like salsa. You're not going to tighten up when you do your salsa. Red, you look like a salsa teacher, bro.
Yeah, I can salsa. You can all put it together.
Yeah. All right, team. Fantastic to see you all. Until next time. Peace.